Hey everybody, so once again, just like the last episode, I was stupid and I booked the wrong day at the YouTube space, so this episode was filmed in my house. The audio quality is not going to be as good, the black backdrop is totally visible, but hey, we got some good information in this episode. Oh, and you can get one of these shirts, The Blood of Those Who Fight for the Freedom, jackifnow.com. Anyway, enjoy the episode. Imagine a person who speaks Russian, is Orthodox, eats Borscht, and lives in a state that is slowly trying to introduce market enterprise in a partial state-run system. Chances are, you're Russian, right? Nope, Latin. At least in Moldova.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs. If you don't include microstates, Moldova is the European country with the least amount of visitors, and even then, Monaco, a microstate, gets like 3 times more visitors. This episode is going to be very fun because if you know me, I love diving into the obscure, underrepresented regions of the planet that need publicity boosts. So be honored, because today, you're about to enter the Bob Saget of Europe. Most people in the world probably won't be able to tell you where Moldova is on the map. If you can, congratulations, you're probably Moldovan. First of all, the country is landlocked, located in Eastern Europe, bordered by Romania to the west and Ukraine to the north, east, and south. Yes, Ukraine even took this 1 mile wide corridor on the lower Dniester National Park, cutting off the closest access they could have had to the Black Sea. The country is divided into 32 districts, with the capital and largest city, Chisinau, located in the south center of the country. In addition, they have 3 municipality cities, Chisinau itself being one, along with Balti and Bender, as well as 2 strange autonomous territorial units, Gagauzia and Transnistria. We'll talk more about these later. The country has only 1 main international airport, Chisinau International. Otherwise, smaller uncertified or partially certified airports can be found in places like Balti and Markulești. Now, after Chisinau, if you consider Transnistria part of Moldova, then the city of Tiraspol, their capital, would be the second largest one. Otherwise, Balti would be next. And speaking of which, let's just get it over with. What exactly are those 2 strange autonomous guys, Transnistria and Gagauzia? Well, in the simplest way I can put it, both of these places are a little more Russian influenced from the rest of Moldova, as if Moldova wasn't already Russian influenced enough to begin with, but we'll talk about that later. Gagauzia is kind of like a more truly autonomous state in the fact that the people are culturally distinct with a Turkic Orthodox Christian background. They speak their own language, Gagauz. It's split into 4 separate enclaves made up of these localities that have over 50% Gagauz populations, including this small 2 mile wide plot of farmland next to Karbalia. Even though they politically disagree with Moldova, as in they've threatened that if Moldova tries to join the EU, they would opt out for independence and side with Russia. Regardless, they are actually pretty chill. You can visit and easily take pictures, see if you can get to one of those welcome to Gagauzia signs on the road. Transnistria, on the other hand, is a little more tricky. They actually have declared independence in 1992, which has led to military conflict in the 90s. After a ceasefire was established, they set up rules, but today it lies in a frozen conflict zone status. Today they have their own government, military, police, postal system, currency, vehicle registration. You even have to show your passport before crossing the border. And with about 1/3 of the population being Russian, it's no surprise that they side with Russia and have Russian peacekeepers to maintain the border security. Yeah, I know, insert your opinion in the comments below. You can find lots of Soviet-style symbols in their streets. In fact, they're the only state in the world that still uses the former USSR hammer and sickle in their flag. Whoa, we started that and even we don't have that anymore. Yeah, I'm just such a fan of your early work, you know? Some notable spots of interest might include places like the Stephen the Great statue, he's like the hero of the nation, the sites of Old Orhei, the fortress of Soroka, Manukbeli's castle, the Arc of Triumph and Cathedral of Moldova, so many monasteries like these, the National Museum of History of Moldova, the National Museum of Ethnography, the State Circus in Chisinau, the Little Prince statue, the Jewish Cemetery, Gypsy Hill, and probably the most iconic landmark, the underground wine city of Milestimici, the Guinness World Record largest wine collection in the world with over 120 kilometers of tunnels and corridors. Yeah, they love wine. Let's talk more about resources and such in... Now, if you don't know anything about Moldova's land, one thing you definitely should know is wine. Most houses in the countryside and even some of the cities have wine cellars. It's kind of like what saunas are to Finland. Great analogy. Yeah, I get it. First of all, Moldova's land is mostly situated between the 2 longest rivers of the country, the Prut, which makes up the entire western border with Romania, and the Dniester with Ukraine. But then with Transnistria, a series of arbitrary lines through flat farm fields goes past the river, hence where the name Transnistria comes from, across the Dniester. The country is made up of small, short, forested hills, cut by numerous creeks and rivers, the tallest point being only 430 meters high, Balanești Hill, and all of which are part of the Moldovan Plateau, which extends into the larger Carpathian mountain mountain chain. The largest natural lakes would be either the Manta and the Beliu, located right on the border with Romania. And right at the very southernmost tip of Moldova, they have a small 200-meter coast with the Danube, and their only shipping port with access at Giurgiulești, which is essentially the only indirect point of access they have to the Black Sea, which is kind of important. Whew! Alright, animation is done, so you know what that means. This is time for my triple shot of espresso break. Noah takes over as co-host in this segment, so I don't end up losing my voice before this episode is over.
Brother man, I think you have a problem.
Don't care, take it away.
About half of the country is arable, and chances are no matter where you travel, you will find a vineyard. As mentioned before, Moldova takes wine very seriously. And for a nation as small as they are on the world stage, it's amazing they've ranked 12th in wine production. They even have a holiday to celebrate it. Their lush landscape is home to various animal species like brown bears, European hares, minxes, great egrets, white storks, and the national animal, the oryx. You can even find it on their coat of arms. Just north of the capital, you can find one of the largest gypsum caves in the world, the Emil Racovida, containing over 20 underground lakes. Food-wise, they pretty much follow the same format as Romania. You have things like mamaliga, sarmale, and plăcinte. You'll notice everything kind of has a Slavic twist to it, lots of sour cream added to soups. Borscht, a sour-tasting soup, is popular, as well as pickled vegetables. Economy-wise, things really changed up after independence from the Soviet Union. Trade policy changed, and for a while they had a huge inflation rate after switching currencies. Today, they are classified as the poorest country in Europe in terms of GDP per capita, and to address this, they had to switch up a few things. One thing they did was they greatly loosened the foreign investment barriers to pretty much anything, as long as it didn't go against the interests of national security and order. Also, purchasing agriculture in forested lands are forbidden. Even so, not much change, and it's partially because, well, it kind of went like this.
Alright, independence! Ready to take on the world!
Sweet, so what are you gonna do now? You're gonna open up a market economy?
Yes! Technically! I mean, I'm still gonna kind of heavily regulate wages and prices and add a few legal restrictions, but yes, privatization and whatnot.
Oh, okay. In that case, when are you going to announce this globally?
And we'll get to that later. First, I need some wine.
Yep, Moldova kind of lacks in the PR department for now. Otherwise, there is a slow but steady overall growth, but it's always kind of hindered by domestic problems. Seems like a great time to discuss more of that in...
Thank you, Noah. Follow him on Instagram. Now, it really does kind of seem like in order to understand Moldova, you kind of have to understand Romania first because it's so important. But alas, these videos are done alphabetically, so sorry.
Ugh, I should have named myself Lomania.
Someone said lo mein?
Getting off topic. Anyway, including the disputed autonomous regions of Gagauzia and Transnistria, Moldova has about 3.3 million people and has seen a decline since the peak at 3.7 in 1992. The country is made up of about 3/4 that identify as Moldovan and 7% Romanian, but in all honesty, they're pretty much the same people. After that, there is a noticeable Ukrainian minority at about 6.6%, Gagauz at about 4.6%, and the rest are mostly Russians, Bulgarians, Romani, and other groups. They use the Moldovan leu as their currency, they use the Type-C plug outlet, and they drive on the right side of the road. Now, what exactly is a Moldovan? Well, in the shortest, simplest way I can put it, unless you talk to one of the incredibly nationalistic ones that will start a debate, they're basically Romanians. They speak pretty much the exact same language, except the Moldovan might use a few Russian slang words here and there, but essentially, they're pretty much just speaking the same thing. For those who don't know, the Romanian language is actually a Latin-based Romance language related to French, Italian, and Spanish. It is the easternmost Romance language in Europe. I've heard stories from Latin Americans and Romanians meeting each other, and they're kind of like, I kind of understand a bit of what you're saying. Where they differ, though, would be politics and history. This is kind of what separated them. Very similar to what happened to the Koreas. Remember those episodes? My mom was in one of them. Essentially, even though they were part of the Warsaw Pact, Romania never became a Soviet republic, whereas Moldova did. And then they kind of became somewhat Russified. Eventually, Romania leaned more towards capitalistic interests and eventually joined the EU. Moldova never did. So basically, what you have are two siblings that were brought up in different schools and taught very different lessons from two drastically different faculties. Today, most Moldovans are bilingual with Russian, and you can still see hints of the Soviet past and influence, but it's 50 times stronger in Transnistria. They are like turbo Russia fans. One way you can see the influence, for example, would be the fact that over 90% of the nation, to varying degrees of devotion, identify as being part of the Orthodox Church. Nonetheless, they've still held on pretty well to their roots. They have a plethora of traditional Moldovan folk arts and music, ancient ballads like these. They have a holiday in July where everyone just kind of puts on a culture show. Moldovan ceramics and weaving culture has always always been a trademark of the country's identity. Keep in mind, they also have a noticeable Gypsy or Roma community, especially in the town of Soroka. They even have a king of gypsies, this guy. He acts more of like a communal facilitator rather than an actual ruler. It's interesting though, because no matter how hard the Slavic culture has tried to permeate through their populace, they just could not let go of their passionate Latin roots. Moldovans have always kind of had like a little bit of a humorous side. They don't mope around and let life or struggle get to them. They love it when anybody notices them, and when they do, they don't hesitate to put on a show, especially when it comes to Eurovision. Wow. They celebrate harvest festivals, a car-free day, a huge music festival in March. Anyway, we could go on, but we gotta discuss the history in the quickest way I can put it. The Tripilia culture, the Drakians, the Romans, Bulgars, Hungarians, and other tribes invade. The Mongols came by, Turks come in, Stefan the Great, the hero of the nation, wins 44 battles. They end up becoming an Ottoman vassal state. Russia comes in and annexed what they called Bessarabia. After World War I, Romania came in. They unified. After World War II, the Soviet Union came back in. They become a Soviet Republic. Moldova becomes very Russianized until 1991 independence. The Dniester War with Transnistria. Scandals, protests. They can't figure out who they want as a president for like 3 years. And here we are today. Now, I asked some of you guys, the Moldovan geography peeps, to give me a list of some of the most famous Moldovan people in your opinion, and here's some that you mentioned. Ozone, the guy who made that Numa Numa song. The Epic Sax guy. Ion Andoina. Maria Bisu. Eugen Doga. Alexandru Plamadayala. Maria Sebutari. Gregor Veru. Nikolai Skislov. Alexander Frumkin, Anton Rubinstein, Samuel Zemurai, and Horst Kohler. They said he kind of counts. Alright, cool people and even cooler ties to the rest of the world, which brings us to... Yeah, as Europe's most obscure nation, Moldova has always kind of wanted to break out and show the world what they're made of. First of all, they get along with many of the other former Soviet states, especially the Caucasus ones like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Although business isn't that strong between them, they still love to share stories whenever they visit each other. Ukraine is probably the closest one though, as they are a major trade and import partner. Many Ukrainians live in Moldova, and they've been key players in their history. Now, since independence, Moldova has always kind of been in between a tug-of-war match between Russia and the EU. Recently, Moldova has expressed a great desire to join the EU and follow the footsteps of their brothers Romania, and preference has been waning towards their former empire rulers, except in Transnistria and Gagauzia. And whenever Moldova becomes a little too European, Russia tugs harder at these two areas, which kind of keeps Moldova in a slight limbo state diplomatically. In terms of their best friends though, almost every single Moldovan I talk to has said the same country, Romania. It's not even a friendship, it's literally a family. These two countries understand each other better than anyone else, and despite the small differences, they are one blood. Many people have family in each country, they share the same language, stories, food, and weird Eastern Latino culture. In conclusion, Moldova is like a heavily Slavic-influenced Orthodox Latino nation with two strange breakaway children, but when it gets a little too much for them to handle, they just sit down and sip the wine. Stay tuned, Monaco is coming up next.